Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz, along with Public News founder Michael Shellenberger. Great to see both of you. Jason, but leave it to President Trump to immediately reach out, get on top of the case. You got Tom Homan going to Minnesota. There's communication opening with the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor there. These are positive steps, no?
They are. You know, these people in Minnesota say, oh, these people aren't trained. Well, you know who's trained is Tom Homan. He's got 30 years of experience, and he was honored by Barack Obama himself. So don't tell me that they're not trained, and don't tell me that they want to be left alone because they can handle things. At the same time, they try to say, well, but, you know, the only one to enforce immigration law are the feds. So things would be a lot smoother and easier and safer in Minneapolis for everybody if the mayor and the governor would actually do their jobs. But thus far, they've decided not to do it. But Tom Homan is the right personality, right experience. He knows this issue inside and out. There's nothing you're going to get by Tom Homan.
You know, Michael, even if by some miracle, Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, and Governor Walz decided they wanted to do something helpful and work with the administration and work with these agents, these protesters, it seems to me, have gotten a clear message that their job is to interfere with law enforcement. Can that cat be put back in the bag? Because that's the most destructive thing happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the big story. I think it's not getting nearly as much attention as the other questions around ICE tactics. You know, was he armed? Was he not armed? There's a whole set of things about that particular incident. But I think what's being overlooked here is that, you know, the left is getting people killed. I mean, it is actively interfering in law enforcement operations. We saw that in both cases of Good and Preddy, that they were interfering in law enforcement operations. That's not a justification for them being shot by any means, but it is to say that the left is putting people in danger. I would just note that's very different than the tradition of nonviolent civil disobedience that we've had from Henry David Thoreau to Gandhi to Martin Luther King. I myself have participated in peaceful civil disobedience in my younger years, and it was very organized. It was always cooperative with the police so that nobody would get hurt. You know, what's happening there in Minneapolis and other countries, part of these anti-ICE protests, I think is just dangerous and deliberately provocative, and it's putting people that I think are unaware of how dangerous their behaviors really are.
Well, Michael, stay on top of that. The chaos and the fear are the point. And so as mightily as President Trump and even Tom Homan might work to lower the temperature, to use an overused phrase, that's not the game that the left is playing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, the president is got himself in a bind here because on the one hand, there's a very high support for closing the border. That support goes way down when it comes to this kind of chaos on the streets. Americans just don't like that level of disorder. You know, on the other hand, backing off from longstanding federal supremacy, which is in the Constitution, which says that the voters decide federal laws, when there's a conflict with states, trump state laws. In the 1960s, this precedent was used to desegregate the South. So the position has switched from left to right over those years. But yeah, nonetheless, I just think that it's a dangerous situation. I think the question is really the behavior of the Democrats and progressive NGOs, which have encouraged behavior that is interfering in law enforcement operations. People need to understand that interfering in a law enforcement operation puts you in serious danger, and it puts the people around you in danger. And that's not the kind of behavior I associate with trying to protect lives, for example.
Jason, I want to move on to this. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz drawing comparisons to the Holocaust. Listen.
Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now.
But you'd think the governor would know better, considering he wrote his master's thesis on the topic of the Holocaust Jason, what do you make of this language he's using? My sense is it's not helpful. It casts this whole thing in a very unproductive, dangerous light. What do you say?
No, I totally agree with that. And look, I read what the Holocaust Museum put out. I thought their statement was spot on to try to compare what happened in the Holocaust, to what is going on with ICE trying to enforce immigration law. There is no equivalency. I have total disgust for anybody who tries to try to put it even in close to the same realm. There were 10 million Jews that were slaughtered, and don't try to invoke Anne Frank. That is just disgusting. It's beneath anybody. I expect more, but with Governor Tim Walz, I don't know where the floor is.
Right, Michael, 1 million Jewish children were killed during the Holocaust. Illegal immigrants are offered money to literally thousands of dollars to take a free flight out of here. So for this evil moron to compare the two is, kind of on brand for him.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not just offensive. It's very offensive, of course. But it's also inciting violence, because the thing that we've been teaching our children really for 80 years is that the only right response to Nazis and fascists is to kill them. That's what our movies say. That's what the news media say. So when you go and label half the country Nazis and fascists, and you go label officers of the law doing their jobs as Nazis and fascists, you're encouraging violence. I just think it has to be said that the left is directly inciting violence. It's putting people's lives in danger. It's getting people killed. And that's the big story here. I think that what ICE does and the tactics may change and evolve, but we're dealing with a radicalized Democratic Party that we've never seen a radical left Democratic Party in the entire history of the United States.
Jason, bigger picture question for you. One of the concerns people in Minnesota have, and they've had it since 2020 really, is moves that allow the mob in the state to think that they're running the state. Okay, that happened in 2020. The concern here, depending on what ICE does and what President Trump does, if the mob feels like they've won again in Minnesota, you don't recover that state. What has to happen here so that something productive is the outcome without the people in the streets thinking they now run the show in Minnesota?
Well, they have to take down the entire financial network, and it's a whole of government approach. I think it'll spread. I think you've seen it in Seattle. I think this is the playbook. And these NGOs, think about it. They get preferential tax treatment by being a not-for-profit, and then they go and they use these NGO dollars, and next thing you know, they're running the city. There has to be consequences.
Michael Shellenberger and Jason Chaffetz, great to see both of you. Thank you so much.